Welcome to a moment of peace and relaxation. Let your worries fade as you settle in for a soothing story designed to calm your mind and ease your heart. Take a deep breath, get comfortable, and allow yourself to unwind. Close your eyes if you'd like, and let the journey begin. Long, long ago, in a beautiful city, there stood a grand statue high above a busy square. This statue was known as the Happy Prince. He stood on a tall column looking out over the city. By day, he shimmered in the sunlight, and by night, he sparkled softly under the moon and stars. The Happy Prince was no ordinary statue. His entire figure was covered in thin leaves of pure gold, which gleamed like sunlight on a calm sea. His eyes were two brilliant blue sapphires, sparkling like the deepest oceans, and at the hilt of his sword was a magnificent red ruby. People from far and wide came to admire him. Children would stop to gaze up at his radiant figure, their eyes wide with wonder. "Look how happy the prince is," they would exclaim, their laughter filling the air like the sound of ringing bells. Older people, too, would pause as they walked through the square. "What a beautiful statue," they would say with a smile. "How bright and cheerful he looks. Surely, and he must have been a happy man when he was alive." But though the statue of the Happy Prince looked so joyful, he was not happy at all. High above the city, he could see things that the people below could not. He could see the hidden corners, the dark alleys, and the lives of those who were suffering in silence. You see, when the Happy Prince was alive, he lived in a grand palace, surrounded by beauty and comfort. He never knew sorrow or pain. He spent his days dancing and laughing in the gardens, surrounded by music and flowers. The walls of his palace were so high that he could not see beyond them, and so he never knew of the sadness that lay outside. "They called me the Happy Prince," the statue whispered to himself as he watched the city below. "But now, standing here, I see all the sorrow and suffering of my people. I was happy when I was alive because I was blind to it all. But now that I see it, how can I be happy?" One night, as the autumn wind began to blow cold, a little swallow flew over the city. He was far behind his flock, who had already left for the warm lands of Egypt. The swallow had lingered behind, for he was in love with a beautiful reed that grew by the river. But now, with the cold wind biting at his wings, he realized he could not stay any longer. "I must hurry," the swallow said to himself. "Winter is coming, and it will soon be too cold for me to fly." He flapped his tired wings and flew over the rooftops of the city, searching for a place to rest. That is when he saw the statue of the Happy Prince, shining brightly under the moonlight. "This looks like a good place to spend the night," he thought. "I will rest here and continue my journey to Egypt in the morning." The swallow flew up to the statue and settled down at the feet of the happy prince. The view from up high was beautiful. He could see the entire city spread out below him, with its twinkling lights and bustling streets. As the swallow tucked his head under his wing to sleep, a strange thing happened. A drop of water fell on him. How odd, he thought. There are no clouds in the sky, and the stars are shining bright. He looked up, expecting to see a rain cloud, but the sky was clear. Then another drop fell, and then another. The swallow shook his feathers and looked up again. And this time, he saw that the drops were not rain at all. They were tears. The happy prince was crying. "Who are you?" the swallow asked, fluttering up to the statue's shoulder. "Why are you crying when you are so beautiful?" "I am the happy prince, but I am not happy. When I was alive, I lived in a palace where there was no sadness. I never knew what it was like to be unhappy. But now, standing here, high above the city, I can see all the misery and suffering of the people below." The swallow was puzzled. "What do you see, dear prince?" he asked. The happy prince gazed down at the city below, his sapphire eyes filled with sorrow. Far below, in a small dark house, I see a poor woman. She is sewing clothes for a rich lady, trying to finish them before morning. Her hands are tired, and her eyes are weary, but she keeps working because her little boy is sick and hungry. He cries for oranges, but she has nothing to give him except water. The swallow felt a pang in his tiny heart. He had never thought much about the people in the city below. "What can I do to help?" "Take the red ruby from the hilt of my sword, fly to her house and give it to her. It will buy food and medicine for her boy." "But I am on my way to Egypt," the swallow protested. "My friends are waiting for me there." "Please stay with me for just one night," begged the prince. "Help me bring happiness to her. I cannot move, but you can fly." The swallow hesitated, but seeing the tears in the happy prince's eyes, he could not refuse. He plucked the ruby from the prince's sword and flew off into the night. As he flew over the city, he felt the cold wind biting at his wings, but his heart was warm. The swallow found the poor woman's house. Through the small window, he saw the mother asleep at her sewing table, her face pale and tired. The little boy was lying on a bed, his face hot with fever. The swallow slipped the ruby onto the table and flew back to the happy prince, tired but happy that he had helped the poor woman and her son. "I have done as you asked, but now I must leave for Egypt, for it is getting colder, and my friends are waiting for me." The happy prince was grateful but looked down at the city once more. "Little swallow," he said, "won't you stay with me just one more night? Far away, in a dark attic, I see a young man. He is trying to finish a play, but he is too cold to write. He has no firewood, and he is shivering. He is very hungry, and his heart is filled with sorrow. The swallow hesitated. The winds were getting colder, and he longed for the warmth of Egypt, but seeing the sadness in the happy prince's eyes, agreed. He flew to the young man's attic. Carrying one of the happy prince's sapphire eyes, he placed the gem on the desk, where the man had fallen asleep with his head in his hands. When the young man woke up and saw the brilliant blue stone, he cried with joy, thinking it was a gift from the heavens. He could now buy food and firewood and finish his play. The swallow returned to the happy prince, his heart heavy with the thought of leaving. But the prince asked him once again, "Will you stay with me just one more night?" In the square below, there is a little match girl. She has dropped all her matches in the snow, and they are ruined. She has no money and no shoes. If she goes home without money, her father will beat her. She is crying, and her tiny hands are turning blue from the cold. This time, the swallow felt a deep sadness. It took the happy prince's other sapphire eye and flew down to the little girl. He placed the precious gem in her tiny hands. She looked up with astonishment, her eyes wide with hope. The stone sparkled in her palms like a bright, warm star. She hugged it close to her chest and ran home, her heart filled with relief. Now the happy prince was blind. "You have given away both your eyes," said the swallow, "and now you can see nothing. "But I can still feel," the prince replied. "Please stay with me just a little longer. Though I can no longer see, I can still hear the cries of those in need." The swallow agreed to stay with the happy prince, no longer thinking about the warm lands of Egypt as winter settled into the city. The swallow became the happy prince's eyes. Every day he would fly over the city, looking for people who needed help. He would return to the prince, who would ask him to take the gold leaf from his body, piece by piece, to give to the poor. The swallow carried gold to starving families, to cold children, and to anyone who was in need. As he gave away the gold, the statue of the happy prince grew dull and gray. Yet, the people who received the gifts felt a warmth in their hearts that they had never known. At last, there was nothing left on the happy prince. He was just a dull gray statue standing alone in the cold winter wind. The swallow, now weak and tired, knew that his time was coming to an end. "Goodbye, dear prince," he whispered. "I must finally leave you and fly to the warm lands, but my wings are too tired." He kissed the happy prince on the lips and fell at his feet, never to wake again. At that moment, a loud crack echoed through the air as the happy prince's heart broke in two. The next morning, the mayor and city council walked through the square. They looked up at the now gray and lifeless statue. "This statue is no longer beautiful. We must take it down." So the workers melted the statue in a furnace, but the broken heart, made of lead, would not melt. "This heart is strange," said one of the workers. "It will not melt, no matter how hot the fire is." The broken heart and the little body of the swallow were thrown onto a rubbish heap outside the city. Far above, in the heavens, God looked down upon the earth. Turning to one of his angels, he said, "Bring me the two most precious things in that city." The angel flew down to the city and returned with the broken heart and the little dead bird. God looked at the angel with kindness in his eyes. "You have chosen well," he said. "This little bird shall sing forever in my garden, and the happy prince will live in my city of gold." In the garden of heaven, the swallow's wings fluttered once more, filled with a new light. His song was sweet and filled with joy, echoing through the eternal gardens. The happy prince, restored to his former beauty, stood beside him, glowing in the golden city. Together, they brought light and warmth to all who came to them, for they had learned that true happiness is found not in riches, but in the love and kindness one gives to others. I hope this story has brought you comfort and serenity. Remember, no matter how your day has been, you deserve peace and rest. May your night be filled with calm, and your dreams be gentle and sweet. Good night and sweet dreams.